slideshow, Anthony. All right. Well, I want to welcome everybody to today's doForms webinar on dispatch and dispatch scheduling. We're going to learn a lot today, and this presentation is available to you. If you want it, you'll get information at the end on how to get it. There's some videos also in the video library on dispatch, but we're going to go through dispatch today pretty much in depth to show you all the different ways you can dispatch and manage your mobile employees. So click on the next slide there, Anthony. So one thing to keep in mind is the doForms platform basically allows you to build one form. And in that form, it allows you to build more than one form, but you only have to build one form. That form, the top section, let's say, is for your dispatcher to fill out, here's where I need you to go, here's the person I need you to see, here's instructions, here's notes. And then there's a next part of the form, which is what the worker would see so that they could fill out what they did on the job, so to speak. And that same form moves from the dispatcher to the worker, to the customer if needed, back to the worker, up to the accountant. So all of the people in your ecosystem have access to that same form. And there's different rules and permissions on every field. So as an example, the dispatcher may have the ability to pick customers from a list. And when they do, it can automatically populate all of that information, like their address and all that kind of stuff. The worker, when they get that form sent to them, their rules and permissions may make that read-only, so they can't change the job ticket number, they can't change the customer name, but it allows them to go ahead and fill out other information. If they forward the form to a customer, let's say for signature and payment by credit card, then the customer would not have the ability to change the price that the job is and then sign. That would be locked for them, but they would be required to sign and pay by credit card. So depending on the entity in the workflow that you're dispatching, there's different rules and permissions for everybody. Go ahead, Anthony, and click on the next slide. So one of the things that we're going to be showing you today is the ability to schedule from your desktop to jobs that are either going to go to mobile devices or even to emails. So what does that mean? You could have 10 people that work for you and have doForms licenses, but on Saturday when you get inundated with service requests, you may have a group of contractors that you could bring in to help you with that extra workload. But you don't necessarily have them full-time. You don't want to buy a doForms license for them. So you could have 100 people in your email address book in doForms and effectively dispatch work to them, but to their email address. And then once they open up that job, it acts just like as a normal dispatch. So any information that it opened, that they opened it, or messages they may want to send back and forth, works the same as if they were a licensed doForms user. Dispatch notification on the mobile uses the mobile's operating system's notification engine. So even if doForms is not running, they'll still get a notification that they have a new job that they have to do. And if they have, let's say, a smartwatch, that notification could even come in on their smartwatch that they just received a dispatch from you. The user has the ability, if you build it into the form, to send status messages back to the dispatcher portal. So if you needed to put back a message like I just arrived, or I had to go for a parts run, you could do that. You could send that status message back to the dispatch portal. You have the ability to set up recurring dispatches. We'll show you that. So if, let's say you were a pool cleaning service and you needed to go to Mrs. Smith's house every Monday to clean their pool, you could set that up as a recurring dispatch for the summer. We talked about dispatch to an email address. That uses credits versus licenses. So when you dispatch to an email address, it deducts a credit from your credit system. And you can buy credits there, $250 for 1,000 credits and $1,000 for 5,000 credits. You can view the completed forms right within your schedule as they're coming in and turning green. So when a form comes in, if that's the color you made completed, you click on that completed form, and you could also see a full history for each job that you have. So you'll see that it was created, sent, opened, completed. Any messages that were sent to the dispatch will be in that history. Go ahead, Anthony, and click. one of the things that we tie very much into doForms is GPS tracking. So as you're dispatching, you're going to be able to see the breadcrumb trails of that person driving to your job. You'll be able to see the forms also plotted on your map. So as people are opening them and completing them, you can see those icons on your map as well. You can open up a completed form right in the map engine. We're also working as we speak on things like geofencing and timesheets. So your people will be able to go on duty, off duty, in a form, outside of a form. You'll be able to update a form automatically with a geofence arrival. This is not a feature yet. It's what we're working on right now. But if you dispatch somebody an address to go to, the form will actually monitor for arrival into that address and departure out of it. So the system's getting, very, very intelligent on what you're going to be able to do. And it's going to provide you a great amount of valuable information without any dependency on somebody hitting an arrive button or a depart button, so that you could do things like job durations. It'll all happen automatically for you in the very near future with geofencing and timesheets. Go ahead, Anthony, and click there. So that's the end of this little mini presentation. We're actually going to jump in now and show you a bunch of things. So this is the dispatch scheduler, and we're going to show it to you in two places. You can see dispatch scheduler in the My doForms portal. And for those of you that are not aware, there's a new portal available that's kind of by request right now. So if you're a user that wants to try what we're calling our S-Class portal, S-Class is the internal name for it, you'll be able to also be scheduled through the S-Class portal. And we'll show you some things about dispatch and how they differentiate. The S-Class portal is being designed a little bit more specifically for like dispatchers and end users. And you can get to things like build forms, but it's really not part of the interface. The interface has really been designed more for your people that want to be able to manipulate data, who want to be able to change information that may be needed by other forms. So Anthony, why don't you go back to scheduler? So the way scheduler works is you have two options. You can literally schedule a job to a user, a licensed user of doForms, or an email address. And if you see over here, dispatch to email, it will actually start to populate any email addresses that you email to. So you're under main, you'll see Anthony and John D, that's me. Those are your users that have licenses. But if you were to dispatch to 10 email addresses, anytime you do that, you would see their email addresses in here dynamically. So it's very powerful. It's very easy to have third parties participate in your dispatch world and still be totally managed by you. Down at the bottom, you'll see sort of the report of everybody in your window that's been dispatched, and you can see the individual jobs. You can see the current statuses, the time that status was sent. So these forms were received at 12:21 and 12:23. And if you click on history, you'll start to see a dynamic history of what's going on. So you see that it was sent at 12:22 and it was received at 12:23. And if Anthony, go ahead and open one of those forms. And I'm assuming you're set up to do that, but here's Anthony. So there's these two forms. And what I want to tell you is, if you see in that form list, you see a description of the job, we're able to pick fields from your form to place into this description. It's called a record name. So if you pick the, let's say, form name, and you pick the date, and you pick the customer, you could pick the customer's address, you could pick a scheduled time. You want to pick information that the dispatcher would have put in at the time of the dispatch, and then make that your record name in the form, and that's what will appear in your list. So Anthony went ahead and opened that form, and if you move your window, you'll see that the status changed to viewed, the color changed, and if Anthony goes to the history now, you'll see that he's actually viewed it twice. So he closed it, and then he opened it and viewed it again, okay? So you always have the history, and if you forward that form, you'll see the forward in the history. There's all the reaction to that form is in there. Now, Anthony, click on all jobs, the button at the top where it shows the color coding legend up there. So you have the ability to see all of your statuses changing color. So as people are doing things like the form is received, it's viewed and opened, somebody rejects it, they completed it, they send in a custom, message, all of those things will get color coded. Anthony, click on the little gear next to it. If you go into that gear, you can actually set those different colors that you want to have your statuses appear. You can also set the calendar start time and the calendar end time if you want to be different than 8 to 8. You could say, hey, my day starts at 6 o'clock and it ends at 5. Set my calendar. So what that means is if you look behind this window, you'll see right now it's starting at 8 a.m., it's ending at 8 p.m. You can make that match your particular time window. And then you can also pick the form that's your default dispatch form. So when Anthony clicks on the dispatch button up here in the right side, when you click on that, it will automatically populate with the form that you want to be your default form. This expand all mobile groups or expand only, that's for this right-hand side. So if you had, let's say, a bunch of mobile groups like inspectors, installers, service people, and you put your people under those groups, then you can either expand them or collapse them. So let's say you have 1,000 people and you don't want to have a list of 1,000 people. You could either decide not to expand them, or you could say expand only. So you only want to expand, and these are like personalized settings for this person in the dispatch view. Okay, so close this, Anthony. So basically the way this works is your window is there for you to see what's going on in your world. And your dispatch button here is designed to bring up the form that you've picked as your default. So Anthony, go ahead and click on that. I don't know if you had a default pick, but let's see what.
I do not.
And you can pick, you didn't have a default, so he could pick his form here. The whole purpose of being able to pick a default is so that you don't have to do that. If you notice, you could pick either a mobile group, so you could say, show me all the people that are in my, inspectors. We don't have that here, but if you had installers or maintenance people, you could limit this list. You could pick them by their phone number. If you don't know their phone number, you could pick them by their name. If you have a default project and form picked, it will automatically load that for you. And one thing that you can do now in doForms, I don't know that we've done this here for this demo, but this work order date can be a calculation field now, so that when you pick your date up here and you say this dispatch is to be sent on, let's say 8/6, right? You can pick a different day that you want to dispatch it. Instead of having to come down here and pick 8/6 again so that the form goes to the person populated with that data, you can actually set this up as a calculation field now, and it will read this date field automatically for you. And there's a bunch of different things that it could read from here. So it can read your start time and it can read your duration. So you can have all of that built into your form so that when the technician gets it, that's there, but you don't have to retype it anymore. In the past, you had to pick a date and then you would come down here because you wanted it in your form and you would pick the date again. Now you just make this a calculation field and you're able to point to scheduler variables, which will allow you to set these fields equal to the fields in this top section. So basically, in this particular case, Anthony's the dispatch entity. So he may have certain things here, like he can pick on this company name and pick a company to dispatch to, and it'll populate. But when this is sent to the person in the field, if you have that turned off for them and make them read only, not be able to change the work order ID, they wouldn't be able to erase any of this customer information. So the rules and permissions for the dispatcher are allow me to pick a company, populate all the fields for me, and let me put in, type in special instructions, let me put in additional information, and then basically when that person gets it, all of those fields are read-only for them, for their entity. So in order for a workflow to work, the form has to be able to automatically re-render itself optimally on whatever device it's being sent to. And it has to have rules and permissions so that people can't do things they're not supposed to do. And doForms supports all of that in your workflow. Dispatching is actually just a trigger of this particular workflow. So now if Anthony turns around and says send on here, basically what will happen is
John, we have a question before we go any further. Nikki asked, is there a way for a user, say a homeowner, to connect to the text calendar so that they can select an available date and time that works for them?
We do have a visit registration infrastructure that we could put together for you. We actually just did this for COVID, where we created a form that is embedded in your website, put out on social media, can be emailed to people. And what we did was we have a number of time slots. And as people registered for the time slots, the company had the ability to close those time slots. So when the person goes to the registration form and picks a day, let's say you have 3 technicians, so there's only 3 slots per hour. As 3 people register for a time slot, it will automatically close those other time slots so that the registration form won't allow them to do that. So there's a whole set of things that we could put in place to accommodate what you're asking.
She said, great, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. We could even hard code a technician into that so it automatically forwards the technician, that job once they submit that. So there's a lot of stuff that we can help you set up. And if you call us, we can help you with this stuff. So
we can also
now Anthony's going to go ahead.
The schedule capability, which we're going to show everybody in a short amount of time here.
Sure.
We can also utilize that capability as well.
Yeah. So one of the things Anthony's talking about that we're going to show you is a lot of times people want to fill up the calendar, but they don't dispatch their people. So in HVAC, a lot of times what we see is the companies have like 1,000 preventive maintenance jobs that they have to do. And they really don't schedule them. They just give them to the guys and they say, hey, you got to get to these companies once a month to oil their bearings and do all of this stuff. But then they're on call in case, like, let's say somebody's air conditioner goes down and then they go on an on-call basis, they'll get dispatched. So what happens in that case is a lot of times the company has no vision into what their people are doing because they really don't dispatch the preventive maintenance jobs. They just give 100 of them to Joe. So you now have the ability to build a form that allows Joe to go in and say, today, my schedule, we close this, I'm laying out my schedule to effectively, I'm going to visit this PM job, this PM job, this PM job, and I'm going there at this time, and I'm going to be there for this length of time. And then when they submit that form, what it does is it comes back into the calendar and it populates the calendar with all of their jobs for the day that they set. And then it effectively sends them out a job. So they use a little table to say, hey, today I'm going to go to these 6 places. And they can have a drop down of all the PM jobs in there. They pick those 6 that they're going to go to today. It comes back, it populates the calendar, and then it automatically dispatches them those 6 jobs as individual dispatches so that the back office now has full vision of what that technician is planning to do for the day. And as they get there and they open forms and they complete forms, each of those individual jobs now is being updated in real time and the colors are changing. And when they complete a form, management can click on the calendar on that green completed form and automatically see it and open it and see everything that was done. So it's just another way to create a dispatch. Another way you could create a dispatch is with our form forward capability. So if you wanted to create a form that, let's say, had all your customers in it and had a list of all your technicians in it, and you wanted to create a mobile dispatch workstation, you could very easily create a form that has a drop down of your customers, has a drop down of your technicians. You pick a customer, you pick a technician, you open the form that you want to dispatch to them, and you pick them as a forward. And now it just forwards them a form, which is effectively the same thing as a dispatch. So, there's multiple ways to set up how people are dispatched in the system. But Anthony, go ahead and hit the send button. And what now versus scheduled means is very simple. Some customers want their people to only get the job on the scheduled date, right? So if you're setting up 10 jobs for them for next Friday, they want that device to get those jobs next Friday. If you pick now, it's going to send a job for next Friday now. Now, some people prefer to do that because they want Joe to be able to see what his workload is, let's say, for the entire week. And, the reason that they do that is Joe may say, hey, I've got a PM job on Friday, but I'm going to be two seconds away from that job tomorrow. You know what? I'm going to grab that PM job. I'm going to alter that and do that PM job while I'm there. So, it gives them options on how they want to perform. So you can set up now versus schedule. So just pick now, Anthony. It doesn't matter. So if you want to show you getting it, you can get it.
Yep, we have 2 more questions also, John.
Sure.
So the first question is from Nikki again, and she asks, are you able to set any sort of territory ranges for technicians so that I can see an overview of which techs fit within the range of covering certain work locations?
So what you can do in doForms is set up work groups. So if you set up a work group in doForms, you could say, hey, this work group is Northwest and this work group is Southwest. And then you can limit through security who could see what. So effectively, either you could have your groups, you could have somebody who has all the groups and you can minimize the group and shut them down and just expand a particular group. Or through security, you could say Mary, only has access to this, the Northwest group, and Joe only has access to the Southwest group. And what Anthony's showing you now is you have different views. So you can see a week view, a day view, a month view, an agenda. So if you click, let's say, on an agenda for Anthony, it'll basically come up and go, he's got a 12:30, a 1:30, a 4:30, a 5. You can start to see all kinds of different views on how to tell what your people are doing. You go into the month, you can see what's going on for Anthony for his entire month. And if you go into a day, you can see all your technicians for a day. So now you're seeing, Anthony, and the next row below him is me, John D. Right? So if Anthony had sent the job to me, you would see that. And you could go forward into the future. So this is August today, right? And now if he goes one day in advance, he's basically looking at the 6th. So very easy to go ahead and do that. Go back into the other day. Yeah.
Yep. So Leo asks, can we download the activity history using sync and save, i.e. viewed, completed, rejected, accepted statuses?
I have to get back to him on that. I believe we are allowing people to download the statuses, but I don't want to say that for 100% certainty. And if that's something that is a requirement, we can have that conversation. Yeah, Anthony, make sure you get back to him with the answer to that question. Because I know we are doing things like the ability to download the GPS statuses and things of that nature. Anthony, you have your job completed now. Is that completed? Green. So if you click on that job now, right from the scheduler, you could go ahead and open up that job and now see the signatures and see whatever information was collected, through whatever that person did. So if there was pictures and there was all kinds of things being done, you could see and review that entire job. So go ahead and close that. Anthony, why don't you go to that little form that just lets them set up a schedule from their mobile device? So this is just an example. We didn't make a very robust form here, but somebody could go in and they could literally say, hey, I want to set up my calendar for the week. They could say, and you can make this dynamically grow. You can make this table add rows. So if they click on the last row, I don't know if Anthony has it set up for that, but you can make the table expand. So you can do 20 jobs versus the 5 slots they have here. For those of you who don't know, the new feature, one of the new features in table is you can say dynamically add rows. And when it gets to the last row, it'll automatically add another row for you. We did that primarily to support all the scanning things we're doing today, where if you're scanning, let's say 50 products, but you only showed them 5 rows in a table, it'll expand that table for all 50. You could use that same feature here. But if Anthony goes ahead now, it knows who Anthony is, right? Because he's logged into his device as Anthony. When he submits this now, and you go to what, the 6th, those jobs are now being added into the system for Anthony.
So one job today that was just received by my device. And if I switch my date to the 6th, it'll show me the 2 other jobs. And if I just quickly kind of swap you over here to my device screen, you'll see all of those work orders that I had just filled out have been dispatched to me. Yeah, so
And by the way, the reason the screen was blinking like that is all those jobs were being pushed down to the screen on behalf of Anthony.
Yeah, so here's my jobs for the tomorrow, the 6th that I had filled out, and for the 5th today.
In the S-Class version of doForms, the way these things work is you have the option to sort of say, hey, when you're in the regular dispatch panel, update me in real time, or let me click, I want to be updated. And here you can update yourself as well. So, just by that little table, and that's called a schedule widget, we would need to turn that on for you. So if you want to use that, contact us and we can turn that on for you. You can literally have your people set up their schedules for the week just as easily as Anthony did it here. We actually did this specifically to support visiting nurses in support of what's coming out as what they call electronic visit verification. Most nursing companies don't have an existing schedule, but EVV requires a schedule to exist and be adhered to. So what they're doing is they're using doForms to allow the caregivers to establish their schedules and then dispatching them out the jobs to go there, and then it's verifying that they've actually gone to the patient at the time and the date they're supposed to be there. So it's a great way to solve an EVV problem. And for those of you who don't know, EVV is basically saying to the government saying now every time you go visit a patient, you have to provide proof that you were there on the day at the place and then report it back to them. So doForms is being set up now to handle the EVV requirements. Anthony, let's go to import and show them, maybe go to S-Class. So there are numerous ways of dispatching people. You may want to set up, let's say, something with sync and save to automatically go into your database and pull out all of your dispatches for the day and upload them to doForms. You could do that. In this particular case, we're going to do an import to dispatch, all right? So Anthony hit the import icon. And what we're going to do now is we're going to use an Excel spreadsheet. So a lot of customers will set up their jobs for the next day using an Excel spreadsheet. So what Anthony's able to do is he's able to click on import, and he's going to pick the file that he wants to upload, all right? It's asking him, how do I pick my mobile user? So you can say either read it from the file, choose it from a list. I want to dispatch these to Anthony. If you say read it from a file, if you had all of the mobile numbers in for all your different people, you could effectively dispatch in real time to many different people just based on the way you set up, let's say, your Excel spreadsheet. Or you could say assign later. So let's say you had a call center that was creating the spreadsheet and they were going to create all the jobs for today, but you wanted to have your manager come in and assign that work out. You could say assign later. The manager would come in and see a bunch of jobs that were unassigned and effectively would be able to then pick who I want to send each one of those jobs to. So in this particular case, Anthony just picked me, John D., and he's basically saying, hey, I want a new dispatch for every row in the import file, or when a column value changes. So the thing about when a column value changes is people are using the same capability to dispatch a delivery manifest. So if you have stop 1, deliver package, barcode ID, blah, 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 blah. Stop 1, barcode ID 1234. Stop 1, barcode ID 768. And then you have stop 2, barcode ID. It will actually create the delivery manifest for you in doForms. And when it gets to stop 2, it'll create a new form with a new stop. So basically, it has the ability to parse through your spreadsheet. And then when the form is created on the other side, it's basically giving somebody the ability to effectively scan against that manifest, and it'll automatically create an overshort and damage report. That's our POD widget. That's where that example works. So you could dispatch a delivery manifest to a delivery person with packages they're supposed to scan as part of their delivery, and it sets all that up. It creates the OSD report. If you try to scan a package that is not for that stop, it can tell you. And you can contact us to, clearly understand how to do any of these things if this applies to you. The other thing you get is a field mapper. So if the columns of your spreadsheet don't match the fields in the form you want to dispatch to, it will ask you to map them. As long as you name the first row of your spreadsheet, if you name those columns the same names as your data name in your form, then you don't have to, the dispatcher won't have to do any field mapping. That's only there if they didn't map, if they didn't make the names the same. So as long as it maps, you'll just see mapping done for everything. They could go ahead and say import, they could say import and send. So if Anthony goes ahead now and says import and send, it's basically going to read in that spreadsheet, and it's effectively, as it's spinning its circle here, it's dispatching all of those rows that were in that spreadsheet. It's dispatching them one by one to me over a period of multiple days. Now, once again, you could come in, so you see that the jobs are being put in here. So I've got all these jobs being dispatched to me now. They're all being sent. And if I looked at my device, I would start to see, they're not going to be here, Anthony, because you didn't pick.
Pick on the schedule out.
You didn't pick start times and durations. So go back to the other dispatch view, and you'll see them in there. Yep. So you don't have to schedule. We have a lot of customers that can't schedule. They just go, hey, Joe, I'm sending you 6 jobs. Get to them as you get to them. So in that particular case, if you can't schedule them, if you don't know what the start time would be or the duration, then you just dispatch them as individual jobs. And then Joe kind of goes in and does what he needs to do one at a time to those jobs. Anthony, go to build forms for a second. I just want to show them the record name. So click on publish. Yeah, that's fine. You can click.
That service order form that we've been using here.
Yeah. Click on publish, or you can click on record name. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Actually, you know what? Close this. Click on publish because I want to show them to do it there. So when you publish a form, what are you doing?
I opened it in edit, so I'm going to open it as new now so I can publish.
Well, you could have published from edit. Okay, when you go in here, when you build a form and you're ready to publish it to put it on a mobile device, I want to recommend to you that you build a record name. And there's a number of reasons, but especially in dispatch. So in dispatch, if you were not to put a record name in and you were to dispatch 10 forms, 10 jobs to somebody, and the form was called HVAC service order, all they're going to see is the name HVAC service order 10 times. They're not going to know anything about each of those forms. They're not going to know what city it's in. They're not going to know what date it's for, what time it's for. So what you want to do is you've got all these fields in your form. You want to pick a set of fields that are going to be filled out by the dispatcher. So as an example, it makes no sense to pick a field called job total revenue, because that's not going to have any data in it until the technician gets it and has already filled it out. So that's going to be useless in describing that job in the job list. So you want to pick things like customer name, customer address, date of job, special instructions, and you want to create that record name so that job list is very intelligent. A couple more things about record names. Record names are used throughout the system, especially in S-Class. When you pick a record name, those are the fields it automatically shows you when you bring up that record, right? Well, you could do a subject in an email equal to your record name. If you say, hey, save this as a PDF, this form is a PDF, it will save it as the record name if one exists. So instead of just having image123.jpg, it will actually save it as customer name, date, customer address.jpg. So it makes it very powerful. So I'm just kind of letting you know, if you're going to build forms, it's very important to put record names now into your forms, and we're using them more and more and more throughout the system.
We got another question, John.
Sure.
So Ryan asks, good afternoon. Is there a capability for the dispatch feature to allow for a job to be dispatched to more than one person? And if so, are there any updates on the job synced in real time between the people?
No, today dispatch is one-to-one. People can reject it. In S-Class, you can recall a job and reassign it, but it's basically designed to send a job to a specific person. Now, we have customers that want to be able to do that, and they just don't use dispatch. What they do is they create a job list, and then they retrieve the job list from the form, from the data as a data source, and then people populate the job information from the job list into their form. Now, with that said, with the new retrieve modify, you could effectively sort of patch that back together in the back end, but there's not an automated way to patch that back together. But you could potentially use doForms to dispatch to many people. We have people doing that all the time, using the doForms technology of being able to retrieve data sources. And now with the modify, you could effectively stitch it back together from different forms, but you're going to have those issues of if the person on form 1 fills it out and they fill out field with status equals junk, and the next guy comes in and says status equals perfect, they're going to overwrite the junk field. We have a new product coming out called SyncDB, which will take a form and basically create a full audit trail for it. So if you did have multiple people filling out a form simultaneously, it will basically take the new version of the form from that person, and it can do things like create audit trails to talk about how forms are changing. So there's a bunch of facilities in doForms to do the things you're asking for. Any more questions, Anthony?
Yep, one more. Can you use a text field and just dispatch the unique description of the record, such as Tuesday-stop1, Tuesday-stop2, and have that be the record name? So effectively,
well, if you want,
Peter, you can. So you can use any fields from your form. So, for example, if you wanted to have a description field that was a text box and use that as your record name, when you're going out and dispatching, you would just make sure that your dispatcher is typing in whatever the description is before the dispatch gets sent out. So that way, when the person receives it, they're able to see whatever custom description they had put in there. So effectively, you would use that single text field as your record name, and every time you send out a dispatcher would just fill that out. And to John's point from earlier, you could just make that field required, so that way they're unable to send it to somebody without putting a value in there.
And you could use things like the calculation widget to parse a date and extract the word Tuesday out of it. So if you wanted Tuesday to be in your record name, you could have a date field, you could have a calculation that points to that date field, and you could use a text calculation to point to the day of the week, and it would extract Tuesday from your date. And then you could use the calculation as your record name so that Tuesday appeared in the record name, in the list. Any more questions there, Anthony?
I think that's it for now.
Okay, Anthony, was there anything else we wanted to show?
One more thing, John, actually a question and one other thing we wanted to show. I'll get back to that in a second. Peter just asked, sorry if I missed this, just got power back. Can you dispatch multiple repeating field types to the single form?
Can you dispatch multiple repeating field types? I'm not sure what that means.
For the barcode example, he's saying. So Peter, are you asking if you can dispatch multiple barcode values into a single form that has been sent out? So in other words, if we're talking about a delivery manifest, Yes, so he said yes. So basically what you're asking is if, for a delivery manifest, it's not just a single barcode that you can send. If you have a table where you have a bunch of, barcoded items that you need to be delivered, when you're doing your import or when you're filling out your dispatch manually, you can basically fill out as many of those table rows as necessary. So if you have 10 barcodes that need to be scanned, you just input the 10 barcodes or read those 10 barcodes from your import file.
Right. Every barcode needs to be a unique row in your Excel spreadsheet. And you have to have at least one column that's going to trigger to say this is where it breaks. So you would have a column that said stop number, and you would have stop 1, barcode 1, stop 1, barcode 2, stop 2, barcode 1. And what you would do is you would make the stop number column your break point, so that whenever it changed stop numbers, it would know to create that as a unique dispatch. Now, we have something called the proof of delivery widget that's actually designed to read that in and effectively create a to be delivered table for you that you then scan against. And as you're scanning your packages, it's removing that package that was scanned from the to be delivered and it's putting it on a delivered table. So there's a whole proof of delivery widget designed specifically for delivery and scanning against manifests and creating OSD reports, overshort and damage reports. And it makes it very simple to do deliveries and dispatch deliveries with doForms. And there's even a functionality in the proof of delivery widget where if you were to create files that were uploaded to the cloud through our gateway, you could put the name of the file, could be the phone number of the technician and the date equaling today and a particular name. And you could set your form up in proof of delivery to look to the cloud to get that specific manifest for that specific day for that specific driver. And then all you have to do is each day you would upload to doForms manifests for each of your drivers, and they would automatically be distributed. So you can do it through the manual input that we just showed you, but you can also create an automated process using, let's say, sync and save to make that happen.
And the last topic, John, that's it for questions, but the last topic is dispatching to email.
So, we talked about the ability to dispatch to an email, and you could set up, once you put a form that you want to basically be able to use, you can set up with the settings gear. Go into the settings gear there, Anthony.
Yep, once the form loads.
So you could set up a default email alias, like this is a dispatch from. You could set up how you want your subject to appear. So you could say use the record name so that when that person gets the email, they know it's from you because you set the email alias with your company name. They're getting the record name, which is pulling the data out, and their subject is, new job, Mrs. Smith, 10 o'clock Friday. So that therefore you don't have to custom build the subject every time. The subject could be your record name. That's why I said record name is important. You could just use the form name as a subject. You could put a default in. You could put a custom subject. You could put a custom email body. This is doing this sort of once, and then anytime you email to the to dispatch to an email address, it'll follow these rules. You could set up a custom body, like you are receiving this job as one of our third-party contractors. Please open and either accept or reject this job, right? And then when they get the email, you could say, give them a link, give them an icon and a link, give them a click here button, give them a click here button and a link. Sometimes people want to put the link just in case, like if you have an icon and somebody's blocking images or graphics or something like that. And then you can turn off the powered by doForms if you want to. So there's a whole bunch of capabilities in dispatching this to an email address. Now, just so you know, the only difference right now between sort of dispatching to an email and dispatching to a license is the status will be sent, but you won't get a received status sent automatically by the device. So the received status is sent by the iOS, let's say, or Android license. We will get an open. So when that person gets this job and they open it to look at it, they click on that link, you will see the status change in the calendar. It'll change color. From that point on, it'll be like as if it was a regular dispatch, because anything they do will change the statuses of the system. When they're complete, it'll change to green. You could also have an address book in here, so that if you wanted to have, let's say, your 30 contractors predefined, you could have them in that little address book, and somebody could click on that and go, hey, I'm going to use Mike the carpenter today, and not have to type in Mike's name every time you want to send something to him. And Anthony, so go ahead and send this.
Same concept on the dispatch to email. You can send it now or schedule it for a later date.
Right. And if you notice, Anthony's now been added, his email address has been added under the dispatch to email group, and his job appears there. So if Anthony gets that email, and if you want to pop it up on your screen when you get it, you'll be able to click on it. It says, please click the link below. It'll open up on their desktop, it'll open up on their phone, it'll open up on their tablet. And now that they've opened it, that status is going to be different back on the portal, because effectively it's now referring back to the fact that it was opened. So now you'll see here that Anthony, you dispatched to Anthony's email address, his status is open and the color changed. And if you look at the history, you see that you emailed it and he opened it twice. So. Go back to dispatch and just click on dispatch. You also have the option up top to pick pending. So if you don't want, let's say you were a call center and you didn't want to dispatch right now, you could pick pending, and it would basically put it into a pending status. And in S-Class, you could actually set up views of different things. So go to S-Class a minute, Anthony. In S-Class, there's a concept of a view manager. So you could set up what columns you want to see. You could set up the date. You could set up status equals. So like go into status. You could say pending here. And you could save this as a view and say, show me all pending jobs for today. And then anytime you want, you could just open that view. And if you save views, it adds a view tab on the top next to reports. And you'll see a list of all the views that you've created. And you could effectively go in and rerun. So you could set up a view for completed jobs. You could set up a view for rejected jobs. You could set up a view for jobs that are in progress. You could set up a view for pending jobs. You could go and look at jobs that are scheduled into the future. So there's a whole view manager built into this system. You could show all the jobs that have been recalled. There's a concept in recall called acknowledged. And let me explain what I mean by that. If you send out a recall, everybody's got to remember that a wireless device may not be in coverage. So if you ask to recall a job from somebody's device, that doesn't mean it's been recalled, right? It just means you asked to recall it. If that person is out of coverage and doesn't get the recall because they're out of coverage, then basically two people are going to show up at that job because you recalled it and reassigned it. So in doForms, we have the concept of acknowledge. So when you recall something, it actually asks the mobile user to acknowledge the recall, and then it changes the recall status to acknowledge. And that allows you to be confident that the recall was processed versus, the guy, it may have even gotten to his device, but he may not have opened it. He may have looked at his job list. He knows he's got to go to this address at 2 o'clock. He doesn't even check his device again. So by being able to do the recall, notifying them of the recall and expecting the acknowledgement back, you're facilitating a guarantee that job was recalled and acknowledged by the person that it was recalled. So very, very powerful feature. And what it does is it actually maintains the original record that you sent to Joe. And then when you reassign it to Jim, you're reassigning it as a different record, and it allows the record to be completed and acknowledged by Joe. If you just recalled something and reassign it to somebody, you would never know whether Joe acknowledged it or not, because it would be gone. There'd be no place to put the acknowledgement. Any other questions, Anthony? I think we're kind of coming close to the end here.
Yep, one more from Peter. He asked, the calendar view comes with the dispatch version? Question.
Yes. Yes. And if he needs access to S-Class, he should contact us. And this will be something that we're going to be building into the product out of the box probably around September, but it's ready. It's being used by many customers today. It's just right now being used on a per request basis. And Peter, you've had a lot of questions today. Feel free to contact Anthony and set up a one-on-one if you want to, get into more depth or be able to ask a bunch of questions. So no problem with that. Anthony can give you his email address.
Yep, I'm putting my email into the chat window, so everybody should be able to see my email address in there. If anybody has any additional questions or wants some one-on-one time, just feel free to shoot me an email.
So remember, one of the things that we're working on now in dispatch is that geofencing option, which is going to be really cool because you don't have to maintain geocodes for all your customers. You'll be able to dispatch to an address, and if you tell the address, if you tell the form to geocode that address, then basically it will do that, and it will do it at the device. So if any of you guys have GPS tracking systems, the way those work, because there's really no human interface on a GPS tracking system in most cases, what you do is you set up like 1 million geofences for every customer you have and every job you have and every location. And then when a track comes in, it's effectively trying to geofence that. Now that creates a lot of problems on the server side. Why? Because there's a lot of overlap with GPS. So if you're going to deliver today something to a deli and there's a geofence set up for the customer right next door, it won't know whether you're at the deli or the customer next door. But what we do is we actually do the dispatch, and the mobile device says, hey, I have a dispatch job for today. Every time I do a reading, I'm going to check to see if I'm in this particular location. So even if you have a customer that's right next door, it's not going to pick them because it specifically knows that you're going to that customer. So it alleviates almost all of the overlap issue. We're going to allow you to have a home address for your person, and we're going to allow you to have, I think it's 10, we may put more in, like corporate geofences or account geofences, like your headquarters and suppliers and things. So you'll be able to do the person arrival departure, any one of 10 different corporate arrival departures, as well as all of your individual dispatch arrival departures. But a couple of things are going to happen. Those arrival and departure alerts are going to get sent back through the GPS stream, and they're going to be available to see on the GPS map. But that information is also going to populate the form. So when a form is departed from the geofence or arrived into the geofence, those two timestamps will be available within your form. Now keep in mind, one of the things we're doing is you may have completed a form and already sent it back, and you're sitting in the parking lot. So the form is no longer on your device. It's already been sent back, sent to us, sent to the cloud. Then you start the car and you drive out of the geofence. We're adding the capability for the geofence departure to go back into the form on the server side and update that departure time. So it's going to be very powerful. It'll recalculate your duration, so you know the actual duration of how long they were on the site. It's going to be a really, really powerful feature. And a lot of our customers are always looking to take their GPS system and sort of combine it together with our form system for that exact reason, is they say, hey, I can get a geofence in here, and my guy is here, but I have no way of automatically knowing when my person got there. Can you integrate with my GPS system? Well, once we had the geofencing, we were probably looking around September, you won't need that anymore. You'll be able to geofence right into your form. And all of that documentation will be automatically created for you. And there'll be geofence arrival departure reports and all kinds of good stuff there. So once again, are there any more questions, Anthony? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up for today. No?
Nope, no more questions.
All right, Peter, thank you for all your questions. Like I said, give us a call if you want more detail. Anybody on this call today is welcome to give us a call, and we will go over this with you. It's a very powerful infrastructure. It's designed to be reliable. It's designed to run in the background. You don't have to have doForms on, loaded on your device in order to get notifications. So if they forget to turn on doForms, it'll automatically notify them that they have a new job. It automatically runs GPS in the back, even if they don't turn on doForms. There's a capability in GPS to say only track them, let's say from 8 to 6, in case they're using a personal device or a device that they carry with them home. You could shut off GPS tracking during certain hours of the day and weekends, as an example. So a lot of thought built into the dispatch, a lot of new features coming, and we look for your feedback all the time to make this really, truly a powerful, powerful solution for you guys. So with that said, I'm going to thank everybody and bring this webinar on dispatch and dispatch scheduling to a close. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.